Hello there gamers, today we're going to look at something that in my opinion is super interesting and I could not wait to get it. This is the Clockwork Gameshell by clockworkpi.com. This is basically a Raspberry Pi in a portable gaming shell. It's also modular. In case you're wondering what you're looking at, you are looking at the front of the box. New Gameshell, redefined portable game console. I don't get what that is supposed to mean. Quad-core Cortex A7 CPU, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on board as to be expected. At Mega 168p programmable keypad. Huh, I didn't know that was in there. Linux kernel 4.1 supported. 1 gig of DDR3 memory. 16 gig micro SD with Clockwork Pi OS. Whoop! Micro HDMI output, really like that. And a 1200 mega amp rechargeable battery. Apparently there's 2 development boards inside. This is the right side of the box. It's red. This is the left side of the box. It's more interesting because it got skished. The top of the box is confusing because it has the same thing in 2 different directions. I don't get it, man. Here's the bottom of the box, at least as I'm looking at it. This is where you open it from. Let's try that, shall we? And they do it like this. The red box opens up to show a bunch of little boxes like this. I'd show that process happening, but somebody forgot to turn on the camera when I was unboxing it. Sorry about that. Also, there's some little plastic pieces that you're going to have to break apart, but don't worry, I'll be showing you those. This manual. And a bunch of stickers. Some of them I've used. You'll see that later. Let's go on to the assembly. Alright, so some notes about the manual. I'm not going to flip back to it very often because for a video it's not terribly appealing to look at. It's just black and white. But I'm going to show you this diagram, and as you can see all the parts are labeled. And you can go over here on the back and that shows you what all the labeled parts are. That's important if you want to assemble it. I mentioned this earlier, but one of the tools you're going to want to have is either some type of clipper or an X-Acto knife and a nail file or some other kind of file just to smooth these out a little bit. Let's continue. Alright, here is step 1. It involves parts A3, which is this one, and B3, which is this, the cover. I'm doing this upside down from what they show in the manual, so you know, flip your screen if you don't like that, but I find that this is a little bit easier. So I'm going to put the screen in and make sure it's all the way up against here. Press it down, and then look at terrors, I see a cat hair in there. Oh, that is a terror. Oh no. Alright. Snap these 2. Together. Really hates doing this side right here. Don't know why. There we go. See how they snap together? See how this guy's just here? Alright, we've got the screen. Now, I don't like the look of the screen, so I'm going to blow it out and clean it up a little bit before I continue. Alright, better but not perfect. I'm going to have to come back to that in a little bit. Just another note about this process, make sure that this can move back and forth and that this head is free. You don't want it stuck in there, is basically what I'm saying. For the second step, you're going to need parts A1, B1, the SD card, and part M1, which is the main board. You can tell the main board because it's the one with all the ports in it. HDMI, audio out, all those kinds of things. Alright, for this one I'm going to do what I probably should have done for the screen, which is just basically take these snaps and you snap them into each other. There we go. It makes this little opening. Alright, now that the case is together, we're going to put the main board in. It's going to go in. Alright, see that cable right there? Where the cable will go? Put it right in here. There we go. And it did leave a space for that little micro SD, so let's put that in there right away since it shows it in the instruction booklet. Presto! That's step 2. Step 3, we're going to start with A2 and B2, and we're going to snap them together, as we've seen with the other parts. Alright, they're together. Alright, for step 3 continued, we put this guy right in. Next, this fella, and then finally we will place the buttons. Alright, now that we've got that in place, we're going to shut it. Come on. And we put the D-pad together. There's the D-pad. And we will have A, B, X, Y. I know it looks funny right now. A. Press her down there. B. And then X, and Y. Don't worry about the fact that these are kind of loose right now. They'll be in better once you get the case together. Step 4 uses parts A4, B4, the battery board, and the battery. As per the last few steps, we're going to assemble this first. Here we go. Sorry about that if it was off screen, but you can see how these parts snap together and form this little case. Next, I'm going to slide the board in. Just lay it down here. It just kind of snaps into place. Then I will place the battery. There's the, oop, come on, zoom in there. There's the contacts. And, oops, wait, don't do it that way. Do it this way. Like that. And then it'll just lay in there like that. And there we go. There's the battery case. Step 4 complete. This is step 5. The speaker system. Note there's these two little guys here. I'm just going to snap them together just as we have done in prior steps. I really worry about this step, but the plastic has been pretty durable and I haven't had any problems, but I always hate those little tabs, you know. I'm always worried that they're going to break off, but they haven't, and I've abused them a little bit. Alright, next we're going to take a look here. Which way does this go in? This way. should be a couple little tabs for this. Oops, sorry, bumped the camera. Yeah, there are. There we go. Holding it in nicely. This is a speaker module. There we go. Note that there's these little tab covers here. See that right there? Wait for it. There we go. This little tab, this has to come off. And then apparently these just sit in place. Oops. Sorry about that. They do have like a stickiness to them. And they keep sticking to my fingers. There we go. That's step number 5. Alright, next step is I'm going to connect the screen to the main board. I want you to notice these are back to back. It's not front to front, it's like this. And then I'm going to sneak this little guy right in here. Alright, now it's plugged in. Sorry about that, I had to see it like directly to be able to do it. Some things to note. Remember, this kind of retracts back into the screen. So I did push it a little bit back in the screen so everything looks nice and tight. This is good. See how this right here is straight? You want it to be straight. If it's crooked, reseat it. For this step, we will attach the D-pad up to the main board. And they don't make this absolutely clear what wires you're supposed to use. They don't do a great job of really documenting that. So this is the short 4-wire connector. And for the keyboard part, or the D-pad part, see how the pins are up? You can see the metal from the pins. We'll use that. Note, do not tip your D-pad sideways because your keys will fall off. They're not secure yet until they're inside the frame. On this side, I'm flipping it so that you cannot see the pins themselves. And I'm plugging it in thusly. This you can tip all you want. There we go. It's got a D-pad now. Easy stuff. Alright, I'm going to take a moment to mention that there is a developer's backend and there's like the standard backend for this. We're going to be using the standard one. If you are interested in seeing the developer's backend, there's also a light bar that goes with it. I can put that in another video for you. Let me know in the comments down below and we'll assemble the light bar and put that piece together. Next part we're going to need is the battery. And notice how the battery, at the dull side up, I'm going to plug in this cable first. Makes it a little bit easier. There we go. And we're just going to mount it down here. There we go. And now I'm just going to kind of lay this stuff on top. But I'm going to connect this. Here's some notes. It's the lower one. And the cable we're using here is the 2-wire cable, which makes that kind of easy to figure out. Alright folks, we're almost there. We just need to add some sound to this puppy. And here we have the speaker bar. Have one last look at it and make sure it's absolutely flat and that you did not leave it partially open. really take a good look. If it is not, squish it tight, okay? Alright. 4 wires. It's a long one. You can see the pins on the top, so press in. And this guy goes here, and the wire goes off to the right side. And it goes all the way around to the front of the unit, or to the main board really. And I'm going to pull this main board up just a little bit, and I'm going to connect him. Now what you should do is check your wire routing, make sure nothing's pinched. So this is pinched. Let's just get this guy up here. There we go. And start going over the wiring and make sure everything is good and flat. Looks good. All right, looking beautiful. Looking beautiful so far. See these little plugs? There's 4 of them. Put one here, one here, and then I put them on the other side. These really help keep these wires down too, so you don't accidentally chew them up, as well as help hold on the cover a little bit, even though it holds on just fine without them. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next we slip on this cover, and should be a pretty easy fit. There's also 2 basically little bolts for this right here, and you put them on thusly, and there we go. So let's take a quick walk around. Menu, shift, select, start, D-pad. Feels pretty good. It's a little bit flat though. It's not as springy as I would have liked. A, B, X, Y. These bolts, of course, open it and close it. On the top we have HDMI out, micro, USB, a headphone jack, and of course the power button right here. It's this little tiny guy. Nothing much exciting to report anywhere else. Let's power it on.
Don't touch that keyboard, filthy meat bag. You are watching RetroArch plays everything.
Alright, here we are. A couple weeks later at the main menu of the Gameshell. There's settings, retro games, indie games, Doom. You'll notice that this is a little bit different from stock. I'll go into that a little bit later. RetroArch, Game Story, Pico 8, Utilities. There's only one utility in here. Reload UI, the music player, which I'm not going to show you really. Tiny Cloud, which I am going to show you. And, of course, you can power it off. Let's go back here to this main menu. By the way, if this looks a little dim to you, don't worry, you can brighten this screen. I've kind of got it on a medium so it's easier to see, but it does have a nice bright screen. It's quite nice. All right, let's hit B to enter. This is one of the things that drives me nuts, by the way. Hitting B to enter instead of A is just driving me mad. There's an airplane mode. If you happen to be at a hacker convention or out in public with this thing, you may want to put it into airplane mode because it's fairly easy to get into by design. You could probably change the root password. Well, you could change the root password and that would probably straighten it out. Although I haven't done that, so I can't 100% vouch for that. Wi-Fi. Note that this does have Wi-Fi, which I've mentioned before. What's kind of important about this is I can hit Y for info and get my IP address. And since this supports SSH and it also supports browsing to it, you're going to want that IP, although you can get it in another spot, and I'll show you that in a minute. Back up a little bit and back. The interface is a little bit wonky. Here's Bluetooth if you want to sync up a controller or a keyboard. You'll find out in the future that might be quite useful. I'm thinking they're probably going to add some buttons to this because this thing runs PlayStation pretty well and it could definitely benefit by a couple more buttons. Sound volume, pretty obvious. Backlight brightness, this is kind of an interesting little app. I just like the looks of it. See, I can brighten it. I'm at about half and then I can back out. Some other notes about backlight. It tends to manage the backlight for you when it gets low on energy, so it'll be like super dim and you'll have to go back and set it, and it will stay that way even after the battery charges. So just so you know. Storage. Another note, man, I'm gonna have a lot of notes today. I've upgraded this thing to 128 gigs of storage. You should definitely do that. And yes, if you think there's gonna be a video, there's gonna be a video on that eventually. And let me know if you're interested in that, because whatever you're interested most in will determine what I do next. It has an automatic update feature. If I enter here, in fact, I think I have a new one. Yep, there's a new update. I'm not going to do it right now though, but you can definitely automatically update. That's really nice. I mean, that's a good feature. About power off. Button layout, yes, you can change it. You can change your launcher. I'm just going to cover the default launcher here. There's a GPU driver. Yeah, it has multiple GPU drivers for it, which is kind of neat. This does have the capability of doing 3D. They haven't gone really far with the 3D drivers capability, but eventually I would guess that this thing will be able to run N64 pretty well. And I'm going to go back. And then we'll go into retro games real quick. And I'm going to show you some demos of these in a little bit. You've got MAME, works pretty darn well. It's a basic, a really basic MAME, but it's pretty darn great. The first time you run MAME, it will ask you if you want to load some modules to get things to run automatically, and you absolutely want to do that. Fair warning. If you want to learn how to set up MAME, I can do a video on that, for sure. Alright, let's go back. This is interesting too. I'm going to have to hit menu to go back in this case. Game Boy Advance runs those pretty well. Nestopia, obviously. PlayStation runs that remarkably well. And finally, Super Famicom. I'm going to show you a demo of each one of these in turn shortly. Indie games. There's really not a lot in here right now, but you can add your own. And Open Tyrian's quite a bit of fun. Doom. This usually has just the open version of Doom, Freedoom, on it. I've added these other ones. Yet again, going to be a video, but I will show you Doom running on here. Also, there's RetroArch, which I'm not going to go into in this video because it is a video onto itself as well. Just note that it does work. I might show you some PC Engine on this. This is pretty cool because you can load different cores into it and then load your games, and boom, you have a whole lot of emulators, and this can emulate a whole lot of stuff. In fact, it would be easier to list what it doesn't emulate, which right now is N64, but I have seen some demos of it running on 64, so it is definitely coming. You could probably count on that being a thing in the very near future. Alright, Pico 8, which will also be a video onto itself because there's quite a bit of configuration involved. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still there. It will not work out of the box. You actually have to purchase Pico 8 and put it in here. That said, if you get it for 20 bucks, it's 20 bucks well spent because all the games are free afterwards. So that is a pretty darn good deal. And I'm not kidding, there's hundreds of games available for the Pico 8, and those are original games. Pretty cool. Pretty darn cool. I've only got a few of them in here. And it's really nice because you're on Wi-Fi, so you can just download them. This is only the second handheld that I've owned that will run Pico 8, and by handheld I mean like dedicated gaming system that will run the Pico 8. And it is by far the best. The other one that I did was the Pocket Chip a while back, which was a pretty inferior device to this, but this thing runs Pico 8 freaking great. Very excited about it. Let's go on. Utilities, there's only one utility, and that's basically Midnight Commander, which is a file management utility. That said, remember, this is Raspberry Pi. It's basically a Debian operating system. You could add your own. As long as you can configure it to work, it will work with this. Yeah, it'll take some messing with, but it can do it. Reload UI, in some of my videos I'll show you what the use of that is, but if you added a game to this and added the shortcuts and everything, you'd need to reload the UI, and it's useful for that. There is a music player built in. How do you get games and music on it? Well, this is one of the two ways. The first way is SSH. I would say that that is probably my recommended way of doing it, but there's also this Tiny Cloud. And this gives you your IP address. It also sets up, you see right here? You can just browse to it from Windows and drop games and music on it. Pretty cool. Really, it is pretty cool. Now, by dropping games, we're talking about dropping some ROMs on there. It is not necessarily a way you can install games. Just so you know. Then finally, power off. And if I hit this, it will power off. Which is a good idea because we're going to go try out some games and show you how it runs. And here we are with some MAME. Note that all of the emulators are really just RetroArch. They've just got a little shortcut to them. And so the first time that you try to run a game, it will load the module for it. So just okay that when it asks you to do that. Don't be freaked out. The reason why I'm not using HDMI output, which this actually does have, is because the games perform way better on the small screen than they do on HDMI. In fact, I would say that until there's some updates on that functionality, you should probably stay away from this for full screen use. Other than, you know, like if you want to use the shell or something, do some OS work. Then it's pretty decent for that. As you can see, the game is pretty playable. I would say that, by pretty playable, I mean it's pretty much perfect. I would say that this plays most MAME games a little bit better than the RS-97 does. As it should. It's a much more expensive device. And it's pretty darn flexible. Yeah, that's fun. Alright, let's continue on. Because there's a lot of stuff to show you still. One of the annoyances I have with the menu system in this is when you're picking a game, and this is like any of the emulators, up and down does go up and down through the menu, but going right and left does not jump one page forward. It goes to your favorites. And that's annoying because when you have a lot of ROMs, it makes it hard to navigate through them. So that is one complaint I have. Hopefully they'll correct that in the future. Hey, let's take a look at Mario Golf. I haven't tried this yet. on here. Most emulators I found on these handhelds go flat on this game. It just does not work well with it. And it gets all skippy. So let's see what we get. Huh. Well, it's not skipping yet. Well, I'll be darned. So far, is it gonna fall apart? Yep, that's fine. And I'm just gonna say Neil is fine. Let's just finish. For the record, I absolutely love Mario Golf. However, for the love of all that is holy, why should you sit through 5 minutes of dialogue for a golf game? That's outrageous. There should be a law against it. Just saying. 7 minutes. I'm still waiting to golf. I am now 10 minutes into Mario Golf. I have thus far pressed the A button 427 times and pressed up once. Just saying. Oh, for goodness sake, really? I am actually golfing in Mario Golf. Yeah, I mean, there's this going on. But, look at this. I am golfing. I'm gonna suck at it. And there we go. It can semi-acceptably play Mario Golf, which is way better than many emulation systems. So, I'm pretty happy with the Game Boy Advance emulation on here. It's not perfect, but it's really better than average. Here's some Racing Gears Advance. Again, Game Boy Advance runs pretty darn well on this. It's a pretty game. I've always liked it. On this screen, it looks great, even if I don't play so well. Nice stuff. Alright, let's try a different emulator now. And here we are with Bobble for the NES. And it does indeed run it just fine. Get over here. Ha! Ah, crud, I gotta... Come on. There we go. All gone. I've run about 8 to 10 PlayStation games on here, including Doom for the PlayStation, and all of them ran without a hitch. The only problem you're going to have, of course, is the fact that built in, this thing only has 4 face buttons and no shoulder buttons. So, if you need shoulder buttons, you're going to be in trouble unless you use an external controller. But other than that, really, it runs these really well. Even though I don't play them well. And that's kind of too bad. Because losing makes me sad. Alright, so here is some jumping Flash. And I'm just kind of running around to show you that everything appears to run at full speed. This runs better on here than it runs on the PlayStation Mini. This runs really great. I enjoy playing it on here. I finished, I think, the first 3 levels on here without trouble. Now, eventually you might run into trouble because it doesn't have shoulder buttons, but I found I can work around it by jumping around and looking at things from a distance. Hopefully it'll never get too tight where I have to know where things are right away in order to finish the levels. But so far, so good. Runs great. Alright, so here we are in Super Smash TV, and the controls are not quite right. I have tried setting them a couple times to try and fix that, but unfortunately, number one, it doesn't stick, and sometimes when I try to map the left, in fact, every time I try to map the left, the thing freezes up and says search, and then I can't get out of I can't get out of the menu system. So I can't remap these. Other than I'm almost sure I could just edit a config file, and I'll probably do that. But considering this is one of the apps that's on their main menu, I think they probably should have pre-configured it properly. Quick note, shift and menu brings you to the config menu, if I didn't note that before. Here we have Tyrian, which is a pretty cool shooter. You can upgrade the ship in between rounds. This is part of their indie game section, even though I don't think this was originally an indie game, but it is a great one. Oh, come on. As far as shooters go, in fact, I think it's much better than many commercial shooters that are out there and available. So definitely worth checking out. It's available on a number of platforms though, so you can play it on a lot of platforms. So if you see it, definitely give it a whirl. You'll probably like it if you're a fan of retro gaming anyway. Let's go on to the next. Alright, here we have Doom, which I've pretty heavily modified from the way that they originally had it set up. I turned it into a subdirectory and I added Doom 1, Doom 2, Doom TNT, and Plutonia. You usually get Freedoom, which is really a pretty good version of Doom. It's just that I like to have the originals to play around with. Nothing wrong with that. And real quick, let's launch it. And as expected, I mean, it absolutely should run it great, but it does run it great. This is probably one of the better devices to play this on. I find it really enjoyable, but you know, a lot of devices run it really well. And as you can see, runs really smooth as expected. My understanding is that Quake is, oh, why did I go there? Is that Quake is just about on the way, if it hasn't come out on this yet. So you'll definitely be able to play Quake very soon. There we go. Die, you little fool. And I mean, why wouldn't it run this well, right? Here we are in RetroArch. I'm just going to show you a PC Engine game. Load a core, and I need the fast PC Engine. Yep, that's the one. Load content. I might as well show you this. Go up. Go to home. This is pretty much with any game that you have to find games for. This is where they're at. So CPI. And there we go, ROMs. And I've got some PC Engine ROMs right here. Alright, so now that we are in the proper directory, here are the ROMs. This cracks me up, but in this one, you can go right and left and go up a page. Unlike the other ones where you go to your favorites. So, this is a more traditional way of going through here. I don't have anything else to say about that. Somehow I lost my air zonk, which is kind of a bummer. Kind of a bummer there. We'll do some JJ and Jeff though. And I'm not going to play much. I think you've seen enough JJ and Jeff for a lifetime if you watch the station regularly. But I am never sick of JJ and Jeff. Ever. There we go. I gotta find out why Airzonk disappeared. And I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time again playing this. Let's see. Yep, of course. If I pull down, I can go like that. And spray them. Come on, you. Get in there. Need some more life. It's one of those games where you lose life as you're just kind of walking around, which is a really tough game mechanic. But the platforming in this is so good that I'm willing to forgive it for that. Oh, God. Well, I'm not playing well today. My through camera game skills are not up to snuff. Absolutely not. Oh, I'm doing terrible. Really? Ugh. Alright, let's keep going. Alright, and yet again we have Cave Story on another system, which isn't a bad thing because I really like Cave Story. It's a classic platformer. If you haven't played it, you absolutely should. It is a great game. I have played a whole lot of it, but not on this system. So I'm at the beginning. I've shown you the beginning of this game a whole lot over the years. But it's a good one, and it's nice that they included it. Here we are in the Pico 8 Fantasy 8-bit game system. If you buy this, I highly recommend you spend the extra, $20 and get Pico 8, because once you've got the Pico 8, all these games are free. They're constantly adding new ones. There's a lot of stuff here that they test out here and then move over to Steam later. So you get a game for free that maybe on Steam you've got to pay for. And they're all retro games. Again, it's an 8-bit fantasy system, so you get fairly basic graphics and such, but look at all the games that are available for it, and many of them are indeed very good. I highly recommend playing Hug Arena. I've shown it on the station before, and if you do not find something you like in here, I think you gotta be a person who likes nothing, because this is great stuff. Oh, let's see, favorite that. There's a favorite system in this too. This is built into the Pico 8. Note that if you have the Pico 8 on one system, you've got it on all systems. This is probably my favorite of the mobile systems that run the Pico 8. So it's pretty good. Hey, give him more love. Come here, you. Come here. And pick an upgrade. There we go. Oh, that helps. And now I can play Hug Arena whenever I want, which I don't think anybody could complain about, because we all need a hug. Alright, let's go on to the verdict. So here's the verdict. How much you enjoy the Gameshell is going to depend a lot on what you want out of the device. If you are a person who just wants quick, dirty emulation, this is not going to be the device for you. At least not for a while yet, because it's still kind of in its infancy. That said, it's constantly being developed, so a year from now, this verdict might be different. However, here's the thing. If you're learning about Linux, if you are a fan of Raspberry Pi, you're probably going to love this device. At about $150, it has some pretty revolutionary design. And I'm talking about the way everything is modular and encased in a frame. That is pretty amazing, because what it means is, over time, you may want to upgrade some of these. Now, that stuff's not available yet, but these modules, if eventually they come up with a version with more buttons, you can just replace that section. That's a big deal. Again, it's a full implementation essentially of Linux in a tiny little shell. It has features that other game systems don't have, like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so you can use a Bluetooth controller as long as you can get the mapping to work. You can go onto your Wi-Fi, you can browse to this thing on your Wi-Fi, you can SSH into it. It is a pretty cool device, and at $150, if you've got the money to burn, it's a pretty cool device, and I do like it. A couple more things before I leave you. One of them being, I would suspect that within a month of this video, N64 emulation is going to be on here. Yeah, it's going to be limited because of the buttons, but I am going to guess that they'll have that working. They're pretty far along on their 3D capabilities, and that will be a big push for this thing for a lot of people. Another thing I'm going to mention is that I've got at least 2 more videos I'm going to be doing on this. One is getting the Pico 8 working. That should be pretty short. And another one is going to be about Doom. Also, any side projects that I'm doing, and I am kind of messing with it, so I might try and port some of my old Ubuntu favorites over to it. I'll let you know about those and maybe get some videos going on those. I want to thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in a couple days. Bye!